is generously sponsored by the Ted Rogers School of Management Diversity Institute at Ryerson University. Before we begin, on behalf of the Federation, I want to acknowledge that our work and the work of our members takes place on the traditional Indigenous territories. We wish to express gratitude to Mother Earth for her bounty and to honor all the original peoples of the lands, including the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. For us, this recognition of the contributions and the importance of Indigenous peoples is connected to our commitment to the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Our March speaker series is focused on this year's International Women's Day theme, Break the Bias. Tonight, we have invited two female Loso Canadians to share their experiences in breaking the bias and overcoming barriers and creating success. As many of you know, the International Women's Day is a day of global celebration of women's accomplishments and an opportunity for us to shine light on the work that still needs to be done to achieve greater equality, gender equality. Yet there are still many factors slowing down the progress of gender equality and women's empowerment. Substantial gender gaps continue to deprive women and girls of opportunities. Increased pressures on women's time, income, health, and social support systems threatens their livelihood. Better educational outcomes and economic growth have still not translated to more and better jobs for women. Now, let me share with you how the Federation is doing its part to strengthen gender equality and women's empowerment. Our mission is to promote business activity, foster professionalism, and develop networking opportunities. We encourage academic excellence, and as a representative voice, we advocate the prominence of our members, men and women, within and outside the Portuguese Canadian business and professional community. We promote women's entrepreneurship as a means for advancing women's economic empowerment. We encourage women's active participation in leadership and decision-making roles, both on our board and in the community. We inspire academic equality through our scholarship program. We recognize the contributions and achievement of women in our Portuguese community through the Excellence Awards, the annual International Women's Day events, and tonight's webinar. Now in its 40th year, the Federation has a long-standing history of leadership in promoting and championing the critical discussions and collectively advocating for the Portuguese Canadian business and professional community. True to our mission, we are all about connecting people to people, people to experiences, and people to opportunities. The vision of the Federation is to build Portuguese Canadian Association where we help each other up and we celebrate our successes. If you like what you hear tonight, I invite you to become a member, get involved, and support the work that we do in the community. The work we do every year is made possible with the financial support that we receive from our corporate sponsors. Tonight, I want to take a moment to thank our corporate sponsors. Our diamond sponsor, Vienna Roofing and Sheet Metal. Our platinum sponsor, the Carpenters and Allied Workers, Local 27. And our silver sponsors, Cardinal Funeral Homes, Faria Kerr Family, IC Savings, Liuna OPD Council, Liuna Local 183, the Regional Insurance Services, Scotiabank, and Vieira and Associates Insurance. Thank you once again to our corporate sponsors for their unwavering support and their continued commitment. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Lara Pacheco, my fellow board member, who will moderate tonight's discussion. Lara is a member of the Federation and was elected to the board of directors in 2021 and serves as the chair of the membership committee. Lara is currently an independent consultant and more recently was vice president of research and education at Financial Executives International Canada. She earned her MBA from Dalhousie University and holds a CPA designation. A lifelong learner, Lara completed her diploma in corporate social responsibility from the University of St. Michael's College. She's an active member in a number of organizations, such as being a board member at the Ethics Center, the Finance Committee member of Casey House. She's the Executive Impact Committee member of the Human Resources Professional Association, member and past treasurer of the Canadian Association of Women Executives and Entrepreneurs. As a result of COVID-19, she's also volunteered and dedicated her time at the Bloor West Loaves and Fishes Food Bank as food distribution supervisor. Lara is passionate about connecting people with people. She is married and is the proud mother of Caroline. Please join me in welcoming Lara.
Well, thank you, Ana Maria, for that very kind introduction. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce to you this evening our panelists. Annabella Taborda is a branch manager with IC Savings, and she is focused on its mission to add economic, social, and cultural value for the benefit members and the community that it serves. She is the current chair of the Little Portugal Toronto Business Improvement Association and sits on the fundraising committee for Magellan Community Charities. Whether working with young adults through the JCS program or leading financial literacy sessions for seniors and new immigrants, including Syrian refugees, Annabella has contributed greatly to the quality of life of residents in the neighborhood. For these efforts and more, she was recognized in 2018 by the United Way's West Neighborhood House and was awarded the Sir James Woods Award for Community Development. Welcome, Annabella. Our other panelist this evening is Bernadette Fernandes, and she immigrated from Portugal with her parents and settled in New Brunswick. In 2011, she founded the Veranda Network, a community of economic development organization, leveraging her global network in working with industry and government, academia, and communities. In 2021, she launched a social impact arm called One World. Founded on the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, everyone, regardless of gender, skin color, language, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, culture, disability, or age, has access to equitable distribution and opportunities and resources. Last year, Bernadette was appointed Innovation Unit Principal for the University of New Brunswick's Fulcrum. She is lead mentor with the Markets and Exporting for Emergence Bio Incubator and president of the New Brunswick Business Immigration Association. She and 4 seasoned business women founded a company to help companies retain foreign talent they attract. This month, I'm proud to inform you, she was also named to Atlantic Canada's top 25 most powerful women in business. Now, this evening, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. We'll be taking questions from the audience, and we'll be posing these questions throughout the webinar instead of waiting for the last 15 minutes. But to get started, given that it's International Women's Day, I thought we would start with the question. This year's International Women's Day theme is Break the Bias. What does that mean to you, Annabella?
Thank you, Laura. Well, it's actually a very complex and simple question, but very hard to put in practice. To me, it means recognizing people for what they are. I actually read an article recently where some of the big financial companies are suggesting that maybe the resumes shouldn't have people's names. They should just have people's experience. And so you would actually look at the qualifications for what they are and not for who they belong to. And I think that's really, really the key. This is a very hard thing to do because each one of us has that same type of judgment. I don't want to say it negative, So we look at a Portuguese lady and we think she must be nice. She's Portuguese. So in a way that's biased. We probably have some that are not. It's a nice bias. And the same thing happens to other ethnic communities, that we have these preconceived ideas. This is difficult, but this is imperative that we move forward and we start looking at people for what they are. A woman is looked at as potentially taking time off work to take care of babies. Well, guess what? Parents, fathers do as well. So we cannot look at things just in a very cookie cutter type way. We need to expand our horizons.
That's great. Bernadette, is there something you would like to add to that?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly on the resume topic, especially. It comes up quite often. I work with a lot of newcomers. Some have come as refugees, some have come as students, international students. Some have come as immigrants with their permanent resident card, and then others are coming on a visitor's permit or a temporary worker's permit. And I hear the same thing all the time, like about resumes. And it's not just about the gender, though. It's not just about the name. I'm hearing things like, can you change your name? Or, because, and the Chinese culture did it for quite a while. Every time they would have a difficult to pronounce name, well, difficult to pronounce here, they would change it. So you would end up with names like Sally and Cindy, but those are not their names. And so it breaks my heart to see that happening. So it's not just a gender bias for me. It is about any type of bias that prevents you from being who you are, from being the best that you are and the best that you want to be. And so I look at it more as moving away from the status quo. That's what breaking the bias means for me. Like, there's bias everywhere, I guess, and some is good, like Bella said, and we like that kind, and some is not so good, and it can be very detrimental to your career, but also to yourself, to you personally. And
so building on that, Annabella, how has the bias affected you in your career?
In a way, positively, because I was very determined. I wasn't going to fit into a specific stereotype. I had a hard time, and this is just a little funny thing, but it's true. I had a hard time accepting that during pregnancy, I was going to have all those different things that were going to happen to me. I kept saying, how'd they know? Why would they know? It's going to be different. Anyway, it wasn't. But in my career, what has happened is I had probably from the age of about 12, 13, I started getting these preconceived ideas as to how I should behave and how far I was going to go. And it literally made me stronger. It made me want to not be the stereotype. And then later on, at a much later stage, I had situations where I was considered to maybe less than others, and I'm talking about males, and I never let that shoe fit. I basically just thought, well, if that's what you mean, doesn't bother me, I'll show you. And in the end, I did end up showing them, and it made me feel really good. It was a big push. So I think the bias helped me. It doesn't help everybody, I recognize, but it did in my case.
Okay. Bernadette, would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. It helped me too. And I also had a very positive experience, not only growing up as an immigrant child. It wasn't all positive. I mean, I did get bullied, and which is a common thing for immigrant children. But yeah, like growing up, like my father was in the trades. He was a mason bricklayer. So, I mean, wow, like we were breaking the bias as a child, because my dad would take me, back in that time, like in the 60s and 70s, immigration was entirely different than it is now. It was tough. but we had some freedoms, like taking your child to work, not just one day a year. You could actually take your kid to work and lay a cement floor and crack fill and, lay tile. And so I was surrounded by my dad and men, because that's the only people that were working in the trades. And when I left university, funny enough, I think I was just drawn to, and I can't remember, I probably went to the first company that gave me a job, but I ended up growing up, professionally in the telecom. Like what industry has more bias than telecom and the old boys network? I have no idea. Like, I don't think there's another industry that has that much. And it was tough, but I was just talking about this today. I would not change anything because it really shaped me into who I am. I don't think I would have had the courage to go beyond and to fulfill my dreams. Like, I would have had the work ethic that my father instilled in me, and that's great. But I don't know that he wasn't an entrepreneur. He was a professional and a trades professional. And I don't know that I would have gone that road if I didn't have like all those old white guys, at the telephone company, kind of taking me under their wing, because the fight was different then, very different.
Nice. Annabella, would you like to build on that? How has the Portuguese heritage contributed to who you are today? We learned a bit about Bernadette and her experience.
Well, I have my experience is different. So I actually grew up in Portugal and I came here when I was 17. But what I did do, my dad worked for the airlines and he was self-made. So he started with a quarta class, which means that's pretty much what men were allowed to have at that time if you lived in the countryside. And then he put himself through school. So I dealt with a lot of Americans all the time. I actually learned English fairly, or at least I learned how to get by. And what it actually provided, and even in Canada, when I lived in BC, what I found is that the Portuguese had a lot of respect. We were very respected. And that to me was really quite an eye-opener. There was nothing, I actually was confused for Spanish or Latino, and that was bad. But for Portuguese, the moment I'd say that I was Portuguese, I was okay. It's actually very, very different from what I would have expected. So the Portuguese heritage actually was very positive for me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What I'd like to do now is poll the audience. So we're going to ask you a polling question, and we're going to ask our panelists to also speak to this. So the question is, what role models or people in your life have taken particular inspiration from? You can select a few, and this has been set up as a single response. The hosts and panelists, we can't vote, so I would ask that each of you state what role model really did influence you. So if we can just have a few moments there for you to fill that out. And Annabella, perhaps I'll start with you. What role model or people in your life have you drawn particular inspiration from?
Without a doubt, my dad. He really was that man. There were no obstacles. There were no obstacles that he could not overcome. If he couldn't, he'd study harder, work harder. He was a fantastic dad. There's nothing I can say negative. It's actually interesting as later on in my life as a teenager, my dad ended up being sick at home, and this is very unusual for a teenager, and I loved to spend time with him. He taught me honesty. He taught me what hard work was all about. He taught me how to respect others. This was very important also because the type of environment that I was in, he felt it was important that his daughters, children, knew how to behave, but especially being a woman, that I would never feel that I was below anybody's level or above. It had to be just right. So he was really the main one. The second one, if I may, was my daughter. My daughter taught me how to actually maybe break the bias. Now that I look back, she taught me how to look at things differently, how to let things happen, and then sit back and look at them, because I was always too busy and needed to get things done. And she would always say, maybe there's, just sit back, see how it goes. And I must say, the moment I learned that, it was a big game changer for me.
Very, very good. Okay. Bernadette, I don't know if you're able to see the results, but we're showing that roughly half the people that are participating in this poll have identified their moms as being their primary role model, with father being number 2 and educator being the third. There was also a work-related manager response as well. Does that resonate with you? Is there a story you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. Like for me, like it's similar to Annabella, but in a different order. Obviously, my father, as I alluded to earlier, was a big role model for me. Nothing was impossible for him. He worked so hard. By the time they were 28 years old, they had already immigrated twice. And to 2 different continents. And so with children, well, the first time not with children, but the second time with children in tow. And so for me, like that, that follows you. You can't forget that, because the challenges, the barriers that you cross, it's just, it elevates you. It inspires you throughout your entire life. The second one was my university professor. And I have to say this, I went to university 40 years ago here in Fredericton. But I met this man, brilliant, PhD in nonverbal communication. And he, to this day, he's 88 years old now. He has retired back to his country, to Spain, to Malaga area, and we are still in touch. And so when I have something like an award, I want to share it with him. He's the one that made me believe in myself. And then I actually have a third, which is also my daughter, because for someone who, actually, I should give them a shout out. They're probably not watching today, because they're probably celebrating, but my kids are 31. I have twins, a boy and a girl. And but she just really, like, what she went through at a very young age inspired me to stop complaining about the things that really I shouldn't be complaining about, and to really focus on those things that are important, to give me strength to then empower others.
Wow, that's fabulous. Twins.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
31 today. My gosh, I can't imagine either.
Congratulations.
With us this evening instead. Thank
They're
you.
celebrating. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Well, one's a farmer, has 3 kids, and the other one is out at the ballet today, somewhere in another city. Yeah.
Nice. So we talked about role models, but were there any specific mentors or learning opportunities that you pursued that really helped elevate you to your current role? And Annabella, let's start with you on that one.
Yes, I actually did. I had similar, I had teachers, and from a very young age, that actually were able to guide me in becoming a better person, and that I actually looked at from a totally different perspective. The last one that I can remember vividly, this was in Vancouver already. And this man, I started working with him here in Toronto, and then ended up moving to Vancouver and working with him there. And he basically was the one that taught me how to dissect what I already knew and applied it to other different skills in the management area. So it actually broke down. You think, okay, I'm good at this. This is what I do. This is what I learned. This was what I had education for. But now when you actually look at those skills and break them down, you go, hold on, but I actually can contribute in this area and that area. And not only did he mentor me, he actually was one of the instrumental people for my breaking the shell and coming out and getting out of my comfort zone, which is something very difficult for you to do, especially in an area that you're surrounded by men, like the auto industry and a few other industries like that. So I have a lot to thank him for the past, and he was really a fantastic individual.
And Bernadette, were there any specific mentors or learning opportunities that we haven't already discussed that really helped you elevate you?
Well, funny enough, when Annabella said that she was raised in Portugal, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I was actually raised in Portugal as well for a period of time, because my mother and my father sent me to boarding school in Portugal, because, well, my sister and I went, and so my first mentors were the nuns. And funny enough, my aunt was a nun, and she wasn't there. Like, that would be like a conflict of interest, I guess, but in the same congregation, but just in a different city. She was in Coimbra and I was in Bragança. And yeah, so my mentors, those were the only mentors I had, because I didn't have parents, and so maybe on a weekend I might go to my grandparents, or I might go to my aunts and uncles, but they were my mentors. And then from a very early age in my career, I was told, you need a mentor. Who's your mentor? Well, my mentors were always men. And now you hear a lot about women having female mentors. I guess I have female mentors as well, but I have a lot of mentors. And now what I find so fascinating, I never really thought about it until you asked the question. And what I find fascinating is that I'm now mentoring. I'm a mentor. And I thought, wow, how did that transition happen? I kind of missed it. But yeah, it's I think mentors are just like, they're just a stakeholder in your life. And you just have them all the time, from the time you're born until the time you die.
I love that. I'm actually writing it down. Mentor, stakeholder in your life.
You can have it.
Nice. It's funny, because when I think about this, I often pause and I reflect. And with my daughter, I'm now starting to think back as well. And I've sometimes been asked, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, right? And now you're 20 years old and it's a green pasture. Chances are you've just wrapped up school, or you're just wrapping up, and life's ahead of you. What advice would you give your younger self at the age of 20? And then at the age of 30. So now you've been working for a few years. You're not as green as you were at 20. You've had some experiences, but anything that you would tell your younger self that perhaps you don't know and wish you had known? Bernadette, let's start with you. I keep going to Anna and Bella. I feel badly.
So for me, it's kind of easy, because, I had 20 and, well, I just had two 30-year-olds. So I can kind of put that into perspective. But I just think that the question is very interesting to me. I think it's a great question. And I wish that we had this type of question when we were 20 and 30 and deciding, what we wanted to do with our lives. But for me, I would advise people to not even look at that number. Forget that you're 20, forget that you're 30, and just be who you are. Because I see so many people, like my professor who is 88 and still sharp as a tack, and making jokes about my UMB role, because that's where I met him, at UMB. And so just, I think age really is just a number. Not to use an old cliche, but I just think be who you are, regardless of your age. Don't let that change what you wear or what career. Like, it's okay. Like, I started my business, I was pushing 50 by the time I started my business. Now I'm pushing 60 and I'm still going, and my friends are retiring from their careers, and I just don't think age matters. So I would just say be yourself, regardless of what age you are. Do what you want to do, live your dreams. Life is short, travel.
Nice. Annabella.
I agree. I think age is a number. I don't really take it very seriously. Actually, I don't take it seriously at all, because I should be at this time. What would I say to myself when I was 20 years old? I would say to take it easy. I was very eager. I think my sister described me as, because I was born late, I don't know how many weeks I was in my mom's belly, that when I was born, then I needed to rush through things and get everything done. I had this eagerness to get everything done. And so at that age, I really didn't know how to stop. I was just kept pushing and pushing and pushing myself. At 30, I started seeing the light. And I think the main thing that I would say to myself and to anybody, make sure you find yourself. Take time for yourself, see if what you have embarked on is really what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with saying, I want to do something different. And you should not try to be somebody else, as you indicated. Be yourself, enjoy life, and do the best you can, be honest, but be honest to yourself as well.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Ana Maria, I believe we have a question.
Yes, we do. We have one question that I'd like to pose to our panelists this evening. Research has shown that women are more likely than men to shrug off praise and lowball their own abilities often in their career. Do you believe this to be true? And what are your thoughts and perspectives on that?
Let's start with Annabella.
Yes, I do. I think it took me probably until very recently to say thank you. It's very hard when you get praised and you think, well, but I also know what it is that I didn't do. It's hard. It's not something that, at least for me, it was there. And then I started looking around and saying, oh my, I should accept it. People are really meaning it. They're not just saying this because. So I agree that it is hard. It is something that probably we should be taught a little earlier on, or in my case, I wasn't, but also if you look at me, I'm so young that was not part of something that was discussed when I was in my 20s or 30s. So we're talking about different times, and things evolved. And yes, we do need to learn how to say thank you and accept praise.
Bernadette.
I was actually going to ask you to repeat the question because I couldn't remember what it was, but I think generally I know what the question is, and I have a bit of a different spin on it. Because I think it's okay. Like, we're always trying to be, and I don't want to offend any of the men on the call, because it really isn't about that. I try very hard not to play the gender card, even though I was just invited to write a chapter on gender equality as a post-pandemic economic imperative in the post-pandemic era. And, I thought, gosh, but it's not, for me, it's not about gender. Yes, I want to achieve gender equality, and I want us to accept praise just as much as men can accept it. But I also think that there's a stereotype there, and it's okay if you want to continue to be who you are. Like, I've only, it's kind of funny because after the award, which I'm just in love with, this is my first business award. Imagine at my age, talk about not being able to accept praise. I didn't know what to do with it when I first got the notice. I didn't reply for 3 days because I thought, well, it can't be that is characteristic of maybe most women. But for me, I just think that it's okay if you don't accept a compliment or don't accept praise. If that's just your humility or the way you are, that's okay. But I do agree that we don't do it very well, and we have to kind of find a way forward because like when you're talking about equality, it is about treating people the same regardless of their gender.
Mhm.
And you can't break the bias if there's no bias there to break. So yes, I agree with it, but I have a bit of a different spin on it.
No, for sure. You're right. I think as women, we don't often accept praise very often, and we shy away from it as well, right? So
Mhm.
we do have one other question that has just come in as well, and this is for both panelists. What are your thoughts on the systemic discrimination, biases, and injustice towards newcomers to Canada in terms of them finding proper employment?
Bernadette,
Wow.
I think you can speak to that, given your
Yeah.
most recent role.
That keeps me up at night. To be perfectly honest, it keeps me up at night. I saw the difficulties that my parents had. I felt some of those difficulties. It's a cause that's very near and dear to my heart. And if I'm correct, our executive director for the New Brunswick Business Immigrant Association is on the call, and that question might have been actually from her. But I do think that we need everyone to step up, because they're not going to find jobs on their own. One person is not going to be able to overcome all the obstacles. And so I'm really happy to report that there's a couple of things. One is there's an organization called Tent Partnerships for Refugees, and it's a global organization. We only have 2 companies that are registered that are headquartered in New Brunswick. It would be McCain Foods would be one of them. And they're leaders. I mean, they have, I don't know how many facilities they have around the world, but a lot. They actually just stopped building their facility in Russia as a part of boycotting the war. And they are hiring. They have a commitment. They've made a commitment to this organization to hire newcomers. And now they've made a commitment to newcomers to say, we're not only going to hire you and pay you equitable wages, but we're going to engage this group, which I'm part of, to help you build your community. So not just integrate. Like when we integrate economically. That's fine to use that word. When we're talking about community, we are building community together, right? It's not just the people that are here built the community and then we just kind of fit in. No, like we have to build it together. Like this is the only way we're going to move forward in the world. And so I think that's how we do it. We do it by helping them develop a sense of belonging, but everybody's at the table. Like the employers are at the table, other community stakeholders are at the table, and the newcomers are at the table. We need to work together.
Annabella.
I agree 100%. I've had several issues. It is really, really, really hard to hire people. In my case, at IC Savings and where I am, Little Portugal, I need people to speak Portuguese. And so I'm always looking and willing to lend a hand. Our head office actually is very diversified in cultures, but the branches, depending on where they are, they need it. What I'm finding, and this is really difficult, I've had people that have come to me with fantastic resumes that we would have hired at a drop of a hat, and I had to tell them, go home, start listening to English radio and English TV. Please learn English. You do not need to be perfect, but you need to understand it. And so we also need a little bit of willingness. And I'm literally just going to speak for the Portuguese community because this is what I have. Some of them came in illegally. They have stayed in the same area and still don't speak English. I had a beautiful lady. Her background was law, and my hands were completely tied. We do need to give everybody an opportunity. I actually worked with the refugees through West Neighborhood House and managed to get each one of them a job. The moment they came in, only one of them took the job. I then actually went and picked him up. He was so amazed. So that job didn't require English. It was a physical labor. But then this man had higher dreams. And by that time, he had learned a little bit of English. And I managed to help him get driving like the heavy trucks. And I drove him into his interview and he just kept looking at me, but you're the bank manager. You're taking me? I said, of course, everybody should help everybody that comes in. This is so important. We do need to give that hand. And we have absolutely fantastic, I have fantastic coworkers that I don't know. This is really awful, but I haven't met them and I don't know how to pronounce their names. But can they do the job? So it is important that we do break the bias, that we do look at the fact that some of these people actually have a lot more skills than we will ever be able to use. And unfortunately, because the credentials are not acceptable here, they have to take lower positions and of course the bias.
Yeah, no, it really is giving that hand up, right? Not a handout. It really is that hand up to individuals that are really key at this point. There's been so much that we've gone through over the last couple of years with COVID. Are there any challenges you see now that are unique to this period in time? Or do you think it really just has been highlighted given the current circumstance? Is there anything in particular that's really bubbled up to the top that maybe didn't exist or you didn't really think of?
I think, yeah, I think that the pandemic disproportionately affected women. So, and disproportionately affected immigrants. And it's because we have this innate ability to be resistant, to rise above things as humans. But, you know, if you look at the jobs that women occupy, for the most part, generally speaking, there's a high percentage of those jobs that were deeply affected, you know, and not only that, but they had to go home and care for their children, right? And so, and often, because we don't have gender parity, often women were working for less money. And so even if they were with a partner, a male partner, that male partner was making more money, and therefore the decision was made for the woman to go home. And that in itself, when you look at 2 years of a pandemic, you're starting at ground zero again. When you go back into the workforce, you've lost 2 years of experience, and that's a problem for immigrant women. And I know this is talked about a lot, and especially older women, and there is a stigma around not only housekeeping and cleaning, but there's a stigma that says that that's not a a reputable career or whatever, and people are making jokes about it. And so like those are things that were like, it's almost like you're in a rat race and you can't really keep up, because as soon as you solve one problem, you've got another one resurfacing. But these are problems that have existed for decades, well beyond like the women's liberation movement. If you think about like, why are we still in the same place, dealing with the same challenges? But yeah, the pandemic exacerbated the symptoms, I guess, that we were feeling.
Absolutely. And I think in an earlier discussion with you, Bernadette, you had talked about the cleaning ladies that come in. Actually, they hold a tremendous amount of power, right?
Yeah.
So they're the custodians. They have the keys. They have access to all this private information.
Yeah.
And they've been entrusted with that.
Yes. Yes.
That's huge.
That trust carries forward. And I know Annabella has some thoughts on this as well, because, you know, I don't know, like, I don't know about your mother, Annabella, but my mother had that career because they didn't have an option if she couldn't speak English. You know, that was the career of choice or whatever. But yeah, like I think that that whole stigma, like we can turn it around and make it work in our favor, because trust, imagine trust. Trust is so fundamental. I one time went through a workshop, and they asked me if I could interview, or if I could have someone from my company interview a past client, a current client, and a client that I really want to have. And they asked a bunch of questions. I was not part of the interview. And at the end, the results came in. And the question was, why did you choose to work with Bernadette? And each one of them, and they don't know each other. One's in Waterloo, one's Israel, and one is in New Brunswick. They had never met, they don't know each other, and they all said the same answer: trust. We trust her. I trust Bernadette. I want to work with Bernadette because I trust her. And that it reminded me of what Annabella was saying about trust and about getting the keys to, like, you know, basically when you give someone the keys to your house, that's everything. All your possessions are in that one structure, in that one building.
Absolutely.
No, without a doubt. And that to me, that's how, when I returned to Toronto, and this was maybe 13 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, and I kept hearing some of our politicians still talk about how people look at Portuguese women as being cleaning ladies. And I wanted to get up and shout and actually applaud and say, yes, look at how fantastic they are. People want Portuguese ladies and recognize them for the work that they do. There's nothing negative. You put a Portuguese lady and you put somebody else, we are recognized for being people that can be trusted. And I'm so proud of it. There's room for all of us. And it's quite okay to be a cleaning lady. It is actually put your head where you head high, and I'm, as I say, I'm very, very proud of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, building on that a little bit, what particular challenges do you feel Luso-Canadian women face today, and what advice would you offer them?
So personally, I think it still has to do with the bias. We're women. Can we hold a job? You're 20, you're probably going to have kids. I had one of my colleagues, I'm proud to say he doesn't work with me anymore. I didn't fire him, but I was glad when he was gone. And I had one girl, he had said he was going to leave and we needed a replacement. And we had two potential ones, a man and the girl. And he said to me, you know, you shouldn't really get her. She is looking at getting pregnant. And I said, really? Isn't that fantastic? I'm glad she is, because if people don't have children, who's going to take care of you when you retire? And his whole thing was that this other kid, because he was a man, he wasn't going to have babies and have to stay at home for a year. Needless to say, I chose the girl, and she was fantastic. And he and the other one worked for me maybe for 2 weeks before I sent him off to the other branch, because I had no time for laziness. And males sometimes, especially at that age, I just came out of college. I have my master's ring. I'm really good, and you know, you respect me. So the challenges are still there, definitely. And I think this is one of the big ones that I don't know how to resolve other than by example. So I have 3 children. I continue to work. I'm here today. All of us are here today and went through the same thing. And I think people will continue being that. I don't think it's just Portuguese women. I can't say in Toronto right now that I see that it's Portuguese women. Probably other ethnic backgrounds have more of a problem because it's hard to pronounce their names, because it's hard to even understand what they did, what it is that they took at university. So I think it's women in general that still are at that level that we continue to have to show and to prove who we are.
Yeah, Bernadette, I just want to build on something that you mentioned earlier, and I hope you don't mind if I delve into your personal life a little bit, but you said you had twins,
Yes,
a boy and a girl.
yes.
Difference? Any difference?
Yes, but no. So fundamentally, I always laugh about it because my son is like a football player, like, I mean, soccer player, you know, he's all that. Like he walks around, well, he used to before he had 3 kids, but walk around like with full of confidence and soccer ball under the arm and long curly hair and like the best dressed, you know, kid in town. But that was just really on the outside. On the inside, they're actually very much the same. They're both feminists. At the end of the day, I raised them both
You
the
raised them
same.
well, obviously.
Well, I don't know, like I did my best. We did our best. But I think that when you have 2 kids, so if I had had my son and my daughter separately, I often wonder what would that have been like, because maybe the circumstances in my life were different. So maybe I would have, you know, had a divorce or, you know, had a career where I was never home or whatever, but the circumstances might have been different at those similar ages growing up. But when you have twins, you just raise them the same. And so like someone once asked, like, how do I raise my son? I'm like, well, you raise your son the exact same way you raise your daughter, because it's about values and core principles. It's not really about their gender, you know. And so yeah, like I just think that the differences are just on the outside. Now, like they've had a bit of a role change. Now he's a farmer turned comedian. Strangely enough, I don't even understand that. He was always very funny, but in a very annoying kind of way, like boys are, teenagers. But it's wonderful to see him like just full of confidence and, you know, kind of go into that career. My daughter is an economic developer like me. She's like, she looks like she walked off the cover of Vogue everywhere she goes, even if she's going hiking. Yeah. And so, but in the inside, that's where they're the same. They're the exact same on the inside. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Now, what steps do you take to find yourself, given all the messages that you're getting about who you should be? And that's messaging that we've been receiving all our lives. But I think at the end of the day, you really need to be true to yourself. So is there something that you do, or a book that perhaps you reread, or a journal or a poem or something along those lines that help bring you back to the foundation?
I did have a few books that I did refer to a fair bit and that were very, very simple one-liners. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember the name, but they were the ones that grounded me. I think the main thing is what Bernadette said. It was the way that my parents brought me up. Those will always be my core values. It's not what church says. And my God, we read the Bible every night. So I'm not putting it down.
Said the rosary. Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
at the bed, everybody around the bed. Yep.
Yeah. So it really is the core value of how to deal with people, how to don't do anything that you don't want done to you. Always take care of your neighbor. And that in a rat race, when you get to the end of the day and on a Sunday night, and I have 3 kids, and when you're finally trying to match all the socks, and this is what I remember the most on Sunday nights, they ended with matching socks, trying to match these little socks. You just go back and you say, I think I did the best I could. I think I taught my children what I wanted them to hear, and that's respect, and that's honor, that's hard work. all those good things that our parents told us. And that is so important. And I think part of the issues that we have nowadays and throughout society with kids in jail and committing murders is unfortunately because they don't have the ability to hear those words and probably have those hugs from being forced to listen to the Bible when you really want to go listen to music. But it's okay. It's all good.
Bernadette.
Yeah, that just reminded me of when my daughter decided she liked rap music. And so like, I'm like, rap music? Like, what about like nice Portuguese folklore music? Anyway, so, but yeah, she still likes rap music, but interesting. Well, when you asked the question, and I'm glad Annabella went first about the book and where you draw your inspiration from. I draw inspiration from the same place I draw my energy, from others. So everyone around me, I surround myself with inspiring people. I surround myself with energetic people. But when you were asking me the question about the book, I'm looking at my books here and I have things like I Am Malala, Servant Leader, The Leadership Code, Richard Branson, Peace by Chocolate, Do Good to Lead Well, Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's interesting. And I have this one book, and this is really my go-to. I don't know if you can see it. I'll read it to you. It's Nelson Mandela by himself. It's the Authorized book of quotations. And I had met Nelson Mandela's great-grandson in 2018. We were both speakers, and I actually gave up my speaking spot so I could hear him speak. And then we became friends. And in 2019, I invited him to New Brunswick to visit me. And then I thought, well, that's a little selfish. It's not just about me. I want him to I want him to be part of the community and not industry, but certainly to meet academia and government. Anyways, he gifted me this book, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's like already it has an inscription on the inside from him, and it's kind of like all kind of crumply because I look at it every day, and it's like I can look at it and I can find, if I wanted to say, like, if I wanted to hear about systemic racism or violence, or I get like real life examples about apartheid, and I can draw on those similarities with what's going on in our life today with truth and reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples.
Yeah.
And I find that so empowering and inspiring. So that's my go-to book out of all those books I have here that I've not read.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
the one.
fabulous. Thank you. As we wrap up this evening, and I feel badly because I could easily listen to both of you for a few hours, I'd like to personally thank the Diversity Institute at Ryerson University's Ted Rogers School of Management. Without their generous technology support, this webinar certainly would not have been possible. And I'd like to also let you know that you'll be receiving an email from us shortly, an online survey asking you for feedback about this evening's webinar. Please do take a moment to fill out the webinar and provide us with your feedback. I feel so badly for wrapping up with 2 minutes to go. I'd like to pass it over now to Ana Maria for our closing remarks, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Lara, and thank you all for joining us this evening. I think this evening we have been reminded that all women and all girls deserve a gender equal world, a world that is diverse, that is equitable and inclusive, a world where our differences are valued and celebrated. And with that, we are all responsible for our thoughts and our actions, and that we ourselves can break the biases within our own communities and within our own workplaces. I want to thank Annabella and Bernadette for joining us this evening and sharing your story, your thoughts, and your experiences. I also want to thank our corporate sponsors once again. I want to thank you all for attending tonight's event. Be sure to join us next month on April the 26th, when we will explore the topic of growing your business. Lastly, if I may put in a pitch, Just a friendly reminder that our gala is going to be taking place on Saturday, May the 28th at the Pearson Convention Center in Brampton. Please join us for a glamorous evening of networking and recognition as we present scholarships and excellence awards celebrating Portuguese Canadian heritage and achievement. Tickets are on sale now via our website. So please join us if you can. I want to thank everybody again. Tonight's discussion has been absolutely enlightening and enjoyable. Thank you all. Good night. Boa noite.
Thank you.